For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is a short summary video for the book of Galatians after reading it, so you can see that we've stepped through every single part of the book, and by going through this way, I believe we've gained a much better understanding of it and the purpose of it, and also just some of the finer points of it, which we've got here now. So we do have a reference we can come back to at any stage where we want to refer back to it, which is good. So it's just a little bit easier when it's like spilling it out on a page, like expanding it out rather than leaving it all wrapped up. So here's a summary of what we've understood from the book of Galatians. Summary. The book of Galatians begins with a warning from Paul that a distorted gospel is being preached, and that anyone who preaches any other gospel will be cursed. He points out their fear of man and seeking validation that seems to be contributing to this folly. Paul confirms his election as being called and chosen by God to minister to the Gentiles, and that the gospel has been taught to him personally by Jesus and not by man. Therefore it is pure and sound doctrine that he is teaching. Contention between the apostles arises when Paul rebukes Peter for being a hypocrite and acting one way publicly and another privately while eating with the Gentiles. It is agreed that they are trying to place the yoke of the law on the Gentiles, and that the salvation is not through adherence to the law, but righteousness is through faith in Jesus Christ that has set them free from this guardianship that they were under in the law. Paul reaffirms that by faith we are spiritually born again and now justified in the sight of God by faith in Jesus alone, not by works of the law. Paul reminds the Galatians how they have turned away from their love they showed to him at first, how they are seeking to be justified under the law and not by faith. He teaches them that the promise of Abraham is carried on through Jesus, and that this promise is of God and not of the law. We are adopted sons of Abraham through being born again in Jesus, and inherit this promise through our covenant with him by faith through the grace of Jesus Christ. We learn that the law was a guardian from sin and death until Christ came, and that Christ set us free from the curse of the law by becoming a curse on a tree. The law is now written on our hearts and minds in this new covenant, which means we will become willing through this spiritual change to keep God's commandments, and that loving our neighbor, therefore loving God, fulfills both the law and the prophets. By walking in love with one another, we are keeping God's commandments, for he says, "If you love me, keep my commandments." And he also says, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another." Paul teaches the Galatians about the son born of the flesh into slavery, Ishmael, and the other son born of promise, Isaac, and that the slave represents the current earthly Jerusalem, and the son of promise represents the heavenly Jerusalem. When we are born again through Jesus, we become part of this heavenly city, free from bondage and condemnation of sin and death. We are inheritors of the promise to Abraham through Jesus, and adopted sons and daughters of God. Paul reminds the Galatians to not submit to a yoke of slavery by pursuing circumcision and the law as justification before God, but to walk by faith in Jesus, pursuing love with one another, and rejecting false teaching and hypocrisy, the leaven of the Pharisees. For a little leaven leavens the whole lump. And that's our summary of the book of Galatians. God bless, and Maranatha.